Hola mi gente, MsMalcolmHughes here. Welcome back. So today I'm coming with a book review. Very excited about it. And it is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Deesha Philyaw. So I don't know if any of you have heard about this book, but I've heard so many things about it. And if you haven't, let's just get into it. The Secret Lives of Church Ladies is actually a series of short stories that focuses on different aspects of the secrets that women carry. The Secret Lives of Church Ladies explores the raw and tender places where Black women and girls dare to follow their desires and pursue momentary reprieve from being good. The 9 stories in this collection feature 4 generations of characters grappling with who they want to be in the world, caught as they are between the church's double standards and their own needs and passions. So that's the short synopsis of this book. And the book is so much more than that. So to get into it and to unpack it, I'm going to give overall themes of the book, but I'm also going to get into each story because I think it's important. So the stories deal with homosexuality, deal with infidelity, deal with identity. It unpacks a lot. But one thing I can say that threads it all together, because the stories don't necessarily link. Like in some other short stories, for instance, Crick Crack by Edwidge Danticat, you will find that, oh, some of these characters are related, or oh, this person knew this person. That's not necessarily the case here. So they're all pretty freestanding. But with each story, what came out so clear each time for me is the fact that Deesha has a deep love for Black culture and Black people. It's the way in which she writes it, it's the way in which she communicates it, is done in such a way that it feels familiar. It feels like family, right? It feels familial. And when she's talking about these characters, it's reminiscent of aunties you may have, or cousins you may have, or just relatives, and you're like, I know that person, right? Or depending on where you are, you may say, oh, that was me, or that is me, right? So I think that that was beautifully done, and that's something that really stuck with me and really was a big motivator for me to want to continue reading, because it was just so clear and so refreshing. Because I think sometimes Black culture, especially when not written by Black people, can sometimes be written in such a way that it is highlighted as detrimental or negative, and that's just not here, and I love that. So unpacking the book, one thing for me, I am a big person. Your dedication, depending on how you do it, is really going to tell me a lot about you, right? It's really going to like let me know where you are, what type of writer you may be, the thought that you've put into it. So this one says this: let it be known, I did not fall from grace, I leapt to freedom. And that's from the autobiography of Eve by Ansel Ekins. And yes, that's what I was thinking when I read that. Yes, right? Because with women, and I would say that that's a big thing for this book, right? With women, it's often stated or depicted as you have to be one thing or another, right? It goes back to the Madonna whore complex. You're either someone dignified and worthy of respect, or you're someone who is pushed aside and is deemed as someone undeserving of respect and acknowledgement. And I love that here it's not that simple, and here it doesn't fit into those parameters. These are women figuring it out for themselves. Also, the dedication, and for everyone trying to get free. It's a big thing of a big theme of something I'm working on myself, reflecting on the question from Miss Sonia Sanchez, but how does this free us, right? So I love that this is dedicated to folks that she knows, and then to everybody trying to get free. All right, so the stories. Our first story, we have Eula. This one was interesting to set it off. So you have 2 friends who book this trip together every year. They end up having a sexual relationship. They're both women, but one of them is like, I still plan on getting married. I am still a virgin. I'm gonna marry a man. And it's like, what? The other friend is really confounded by this, and it causes her to grapple with who will she be, and is that the life she wants, right? I think that she felt that they were doing something different, even though they weren't on the same page. Also, I'm just gonna read a little bit of the ending. Eula begins to whisper. I move closer to hear what she's saying and realize that she's praying. When she says amen, I get up and walk to the foot of the bed and kneel down. Eula's toenails are painted the same pink as her scarf. I reach for her ankles and pull her toward me. She scoots on her butt until she's at the edge, her feet flat on the bed on either side of me. She spreads her knees apart. I push down gently on the inside of her thighs until she is open like an altar. 10, 9, 8. I'm speaking in tongues. 4, 3, 2. Eula has her prayers and I have mine. She's a good writer. That's one thing I will say. While consistently reading, it's like, oh, she's a good writer. She is a good writer. And you understand that by reading these stories, that she's a really good writer. And I think that she pays enough attention to details that you get a good feel for the setting, you get a good enough feel for the characters without you feeling as if she's giving you so much detail that's now daunting to make it through, which I find sometimes authors do. Our second story, Not Daniel. This one was fun. So this one is about two individuals whose parents are dying. Their parents are dying, they meet, their parents are in hospice care, and they end up having an affair together, and they find salvation in the fact that through this sexual intercourse, they get reprieve from what they're going through, the pain of it. They also get to be with someone who's carrying the same weight. And I think that's important because sometimes as humans, I think we seek that, right? I think that sometimes when we're going through things, it's hard because other people may feel sympathetic. Often I wish people felt more empathetic, but people may feel sympathetic and they say they have pain for you and they feel it, right? I get it. Often people say, I understand. But unless you know that someone has actually gone through it, it's a different type of knowingness. And these people find that in each other in these momentary times, even though they both actually have lives and partners outside of this. Again, I think use of language is really important. So she says here, he was rough but not unkind. And I love that. I love the imagery. I think she does a good job of creating imagery for us. And this was a really short story. It was only like 5 pages or so, but it was a lot there. And it was enough to really make you feel the pain that these characters are going through, but also their deep humanity. And even though what they're doing would be deemed wrong, you completely understand why they would do it. Dear Sister is the next story. Dear Sister was a little longer than some of the other stories, but this one was one where you completely felt the family dynamic. So there are these sisters whose father has died. They all have different relationships with him. They all, for the most part, have different mothers. So Papa was a Rolling Stone. And they write this letter. They're writing this letter to the sister who doesn't know him. She hasn't really been around. And they're just finding out about her, right? So how do you explain to a sister that you don't know what's been lost, who she's lost, or the fact that like you didn't really miss out on anything because he wasn't a great father to us. So if you think that you would have had some amazing fatherly figure, no. But also to welcome her, but also depict the fact that there are multiple women with multiple feelings about you, who have multiple things going on in our lives, but you are a part of this clan. And no matter what, in the end, we welcome you and we want you here. It's so beautifully done. It reminds you so much of a family reunion or a family picnic or a barbecue, just a family gathering, right? Think of it, or just around death, right? When families gather together and you have tales of what's happening, tales of the future, right? Because grandma's here and she's like, somebody's pregnant. But could it be you? Right? Because even though you haven't been here with us, you're still connected. I think it's really well done. And I think it really causes you to reflect on kinship and how we interact with each other, as far as like blood relations, and that the kinship that we've kind of sometimes moved away from, and getting back to the fact that you're stuck with us. And all of this insanity, for all of the craziness, we want you here. This is who we are. Come. The next one, Peach Cobbler. This one could have been a novel. This one could have definitely been a novel. I wanted more. This was deep and layered, and was written with so much care. So this is a story about a young woman who lives with her mother. Her mother's a single mother, but she's been having this long-standing affair with the pastor of the church. And the pastor comes by her once a week, and her mother makes this peach cobbler, the best in the state. And he eats the entire pan by himself, and then they usually go into her bedroom and have sex. And her daughter knows that all of this is happening and is very uncomfortable, and that her and the mother have a very, very unhealthy and problematic relationship. And the mother really isn't a mother, right? She's really not there. She shows kindness to the pastor that she does not show to her daughter. She won't let her daughter get any of the peach cobbler. At one point, the daughter goes to some extreme measure to get some, but the mother has a rationale for why she's doing it, and this is what she says. So the daughter wants to go to a party, and the mother won't let her go. And at this one point, the pastor's trying to advocate for the daughter. It's like, you should let her go. Why won't you let her go? Because they're not well off, but the other family is. And the mother says this: they can raise their children however they see fit, but I'm not going to raise mine to go through life expecting it to be sweet, when for her, it ain't going to be. The sooner she learns to accept what it is and what it ain't, the better. She gets a taste of that sweetness, she's gonna want it so bad, she'll grow up and settle for crumbs of it. What? That was so good. That was so good. Because even though that's your stance, that's what you're teaching her. James Baldwin once said, the children are not very good at doing what we say, but they have never failed at emulating what we do. Actually, I lied earlier. One of the stories does connect to this one in the end. There is a connection, yes. Okay, but for this story, you're raising her by telling her she doesn't deserve the good things in life, right? And what you're showing her is so limited. You don't want to let her expand and grow. You don't have a father figure here, or simply another parent figure to help and nurture and mature her. She's seeing you drink, and the only time you come alive is for the attention of this man. Whatever message you think you're sending, I promise you, that's not the one she's getting. What makes this even deeper and chaotic even is the fact that eventually the mother sends her daughter to tutor the pastor's son, and to kind of spy on the pastor's wife in a sense. But eventually the daughter loses her virginity to the son, and listen, it's a mess. It's a whole mess. Finally the daughter confronts the mother, and one thing she realizes is she's a child and she has no real power in that moment, and she still needs her mother. And that's kind of where the story ends for us, but it gives you a lot to think with and to unpack. And I love the fact that she does come back to it in a later story, but we'll get to that in a moment. Again, just well done. Just handled with care. You could tell the stories and the characters are handled with care. The next story is Snowfall. I like this story. It's one of the more, I would say, it's a slower story, right? It gives you a little bit of reprieve. Think of it like Snowfall, right? If you're in the house, it's winter, and that's kind of our setting. Our two characters are a lesbian couple who have moved from their families in the South. They found each other. They've moved to a very cold state with winters that they're not accustomed to, and really what they have are each other. But they're going through it because one person sees the other as like, home, you're home for me. And our main character misses home, misses the warmth of her southern state, misses the warmth on multiple levels, the weather and also the people, right? Misses her mother and the relationship that they had before she came out to her, because it's changed and it's kind of non-existent. Whereas for our other character, doesn't really have that relationship with their parents, and they're like, I don't miss home. For me, home is wherever you are. And that's really contentious for them for a while. And it as you're reading it, you're like, oh, this may cause them to no longer be together. And so you grapple with that very real human factor that I may love you, but what I want and need, you may not be able to provide. But eventually they figure it out in a way that's well done. And it's surprising. I was surprised, but I was also encouraged. And that's one of the things I love about books, is you can see multiple ways to play a situation, and you may see solutions to a problem that you had never even fathomed. And I thought that was really well done. It would give you something to think about, but you also got to see the fragility, and also the vulnerability, but the resilience that humans can have, especially concerning love and commitment. Our next story, How to Make Love to a Physicist. Again, this one could have been a novel. This one could have been a novel. This one was masterfully done. This is like, we're pretty deep into the book now, and this is when you're like, oh, she's hitting a groove. She's good, right? This is when, for me, Deesha Philyaw, I was like, oh no, she's good. Right? Like the things that people are saying, you've been reading that, you've been enjoying it, but this story solidified it for me though. She's good, and this is a good debut book. So this one, you have a woman who goes to a convention for like STEM, right? And she meets a guy, and she's someone who's been dealing with like insecurities and different things, and they end up having an amazing time. And I love the fact that all of the transitions within them, right? Their dynamic, them getting to know each other, them not getting to know each other, right? It all is centered around this one question. How do you make love to a physicist? And then it goes into it, where they are, where she is really, because she, for a large portion of the story, is determining the pace, determining the direction, determining whether or not this stops completely, right? But I loved the honesty, I love the introspection, I love the analysis, I love the review of self, I loved all of it. I loved all of it. I loved all of it. I loved the ending. I loved the fact that they were having very honest human conversations. I love the fact that they were different. I love the fact that he was understanding and patient. There were moments when I wanted to wring our main character's neck. I was like, girl, if you don't get it together, right? But that's how we are, right? As humans, you're like, that is illogical. That makes no sense. What you're thinking makes no sense. But it's a human flaw. And I loved how well she wrote it here. And we got to really be in it with this character. It was good. It was really good. Our next story is Jael. Oof. Now that I'm reviewing these back for y'all, this book kind of gets hotter and hotter. Like the flames, the intensity, it revs up. And it's good. This one, insert He Had It Coming from Chicago. This one is really about friendship and sisterhood. And there's a passage here that I'll read, but essentially it's about two young women who are friends. They're growing up and they're trying to figure out who they are and their identities. And one of them is more promiscuous or just more willing to go out there and try it. And if I fail or if I mess up, then that's what I did. And the other one is really more meticulous, more calculated, more on guard. But what makes this so interesting is that we get that compounded with the grandmother, because the grandmother is telling us a lot about one of our characters and the way that the grandmother perceives her, and then how she perceives herself. Essentially, we have the grandmother reading her journal and then the grandmother responding, right? So it'll go back and forth. the grandmother isn't responding via writing, but she's telling more of the story and how this is playing out in real life. And sometimes they interact, but there's also the dynamic with the friend. So it's multi-layered and it's multi-tiered, and it's quite fascinating. And the passage that I'll read, I'll just read the ending of it, is this. I'll read the full paragraph. Cashel swore on Miss Deborah's Bible that all that time she was alone at Jamie's house before we went to the beach, all she let him do was kiss her. I said, yeah, kiss you where? And she got all mad. I didn't want to talk to her for a long time after that day at the beach. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was lying to me. And I'm sick and tired of people lying to me. But I guess me and Cashel are friends again. I worry about her more than I'm mad at her. But when she does stuff to make me worry, that makes me mad. Being friends with someone who can't look out for themselves is a lot of work, and I'm tired. But Cashel would just say, I can look out for myself. But she can't. I know she can't. She ain't built for it. Also, I just love the writing. It really causes you to see and feel. But to be a protector, and our main character is so misunderstood by her grandmother and those around her. Her grandmother really thinks she's like crazy and demonic and needs a lot of prayer. But her grandmother also has her own challenges, and she does things, and I really want y'all to read it. I have a hard time sometimes, but like telling enough but not telling too much. But this one is so amazingly done and really causes you to reflect. That also could have been a novel. I would have read that full book. I actually would like to unpack our main character some more. So Deesha, if you want to expound on that story with a part 2, I wouldn't be mad. This is where the peach cobbler comes back up, our next story. Instructions for married Christian husbands. Our main character from our first story now has a bakery where she makes things, and she meets men there who are married or involved, and she has these instruction manuals on how they can engage with her because the fact that they are unavailable entices her. You see how her mother passed this on to her? Peach cobbler recipe, along with the desire for unavailable men. So be careful what you pass into your children, intentionally or not. But that is super, I think, super revolutionary the way she does it, even though it comes from a place of trauma. A psychologist can have a field day with that, but I enjoyed it. Our last story, When Gerald Levert Comes, was probably my least favorite story. I was actually really sad that she ended the book on that note because I didn't love the story. But essentially, it is a woman taking care of her mother who is going through dementia. And it is packed. It's necessary. It really delves with the fact that sometimes in the Black community or in communities of color or in communities that women raise their daughters but love their sons. She has a very different experience with her daughter than she does with her sons. Colorism comes into play, a lot of different factors. But she has this one picture of her and Joe Levert, and whenever Joe Levert songs come on, she comes to life. And the daughter has to grapple with a lot of it. Her mother doesn't really recognize her, but she recognizes Joe Levert. And how does she unpack that? Because her and her mother did not have a good relationship. Her mother was not kind. Colorism comes into play. It's a lot there. It's really interesting to unpack. I think it should have been some cushion somewhere in the middle, not at the end of the book. But it doesn't take it away from the book at all in any way. I think that it's still well done. I think that it's worth reading. If going on my scale of whether or not you should read this immediately, read it when you have time, or you don't need to read it, I would say read it immediately. It's worth it if you're looking for something that's going to give you depth, give you range, but also will pick you up, get you out of a reading slump. It's still relatively light. One clear message I think that was worthwhile for this book was that often in a lot of the stories you had women having children over 40, and women finding love over 40, women still finding themselves and exploring who they want to be over 40. So I really felt a message that was saying here as well, is that life doesn't stop in your 30s. Life doesn't stop when society tells you. You can still go forward. But I really enjoyed the book. Again, I think that everyone should go read it. I do wonder if the title is a bit of a misnomer, just because I feel as if it gives the impression this will be heavily seeped in church, and I didn't get that here, even though it does come up and even though it does play a part, especially when you have certain questions, certain characters saying, for a long time I thought the pastor was God, and then their son saying, yeah, me too, right? And what does that mean when you realize that God isn't this man who you viewed as a God is only human? So much to unpack here. So good, worth the read. You should all check it out. Yeah, I want Yada. That's back there, but that's I got this years ago, and I really love it. It is my poster of Huey from the Boondocks. I love the Boondocks. If you don't know, that's him if he was grown, and I think it's so beautiful. And it's back there, so if I sat right here, you'd always see it, but I'm mostly here, so you don't see it. More book reviews to come. My August reads will be coming. Very excited about that. If you can see up there, that might be a sneak preview of what's coming in August. We shall see. But as always, I'm MsMalcolmHughes, one who loves books. And until next time, continue to stay safe. Remember to give time, and to have the best day of your life on purpose. Odabo. Also, for those of you inquiring, I do still have buttons, my MsMalcolmHughes pens, and the details on how to get those are below.